Ladies and gents, welcome back to another video. Today we've got an iPad mini. This should be a 4th generation iPad mini, and this one should be running iOS 9, which is the original version that it shipped with when this thing was launched. If the eBay listing that I purchased this from is correct, this should be iOS 9.0, which obviously is the first version that came on this iPad mini. So that's pretty cool. Let's get it opened up, see what kind of condition it's in, and find out if we have ourselves an iPad mini 4th gen running iOS 9. Let's begin. So here is that Mac mini. It is pretty dirty, as you can see there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give this a bit of a clean, and I'm gonna plug it into power because I am sure this thing has been dead for quite some time. And then we're gonna power this thing on and see if we have ourselves an iPad mini 4th gen running iOS 9. All right, the iPad has been cleaned up and the screen is in very nice condition. There are maybe just a few small scratches. I think you can see one kind of right there in the light. Overall, very nice condition. The back of the device also has a few scratches, but I'm not seeing any major dents or scuff marks. Maybe right there, you can kind of see it reflecting in the light. There is a tiny dent there, but apart from that, just some scratches. The display is not cracked and appears to be in very nice condition. This is in the silver color. Silver and gold are sometimes a little bit difficult to tell apart, but this is definitely a 4th gen because of the way that it is. More specifically, it's got the single row of speaker grills down there at the bottom. It's got the microphone here on the side, and it's got Touch ID, and it is also very thin. I believe, I could be wrong about this, but actually, let me just go ahead and double check before I speak on that. Okay, I wanted to check the dimensions. The iPad mini 4th gen is significantly thinner than the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd gen, kind of in the same way that the iPad Air 2nd gen was much thinner than the 1st gen iPad Air. This now has a laminated display, which is something that you can feel when you are using the device. But enough talk, let's get this thing set up here, and it is on the lock screen. You can see we've got slide to unlock. That can only mean one thing, and that is iOS 9. Here we are on the iOS 9 home screen on the 4th gen iPad mini. Now let's head into settings, general, and about, and see which version we've got. 9.0, that is the earliest version of iOS 9 possible. There is one photo, I'm not sure what that would be, and it is a 16 gigabyte model. So base configuration, nothing too impressive there, but finding one of these on iOS 9 is a real treat. Let's see what that single photo is. I bet it's a screenshot. It is not. Is that my table? Kind of looks like my table. I don't know if I took that picture on accident, but kind of weird. Wait, no, September 10th, 2024. That was way before I got this device. Okay, so I did not take that picture, even though it does look shockingly similar to my table. Interesting. Okay, so here we go. 4th gen iPad mini. This thing's running iOS 9. The iPad mini 4th gen was a big improvement to the iPad mini line. The 3rd gen that this iPad mini replaced was literally just an iPad mini 2nd gen with Touch ID. The 3rd gen, I don't even know why they came out with it. I think it was one of the worst selling iPads of all time because they literally did nothing. It was the exact same iPad with Touch ID sensor there on the home button. But the 4th gen here was a huge improvement. Not only did this thing get much thinner and lighter, it got a significantly faster CPU. This is the A8 chip paired with 2 gigs of RAM. We're gonna talk about that in just a minute. There's an interesting story with the 4th gen iPad mini, its specs, and its software support. We'll get to that in a second. But this thing has an A8 chip. It's the same one that you would find in the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, but it's clocked a little bit faster and it has 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the reason that is significant is because even with the same CPU and the same GPU as the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, this thing goes all the way up to iOS 15. Those devices, the iPhones, stop at iOS 12. So 3 years of software support this thing got in addition to what the iPhone 6 and the 6 Plus got, all because it has an extra gigabyte of RAM. That is how much memory plays a role in these devices. Apple has been notorious for being quite stingy with their RAM, especially in the days of this device here. And the fact that the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus only had a single gigabyte really limited them, and their performance suffered as a result of it. But I do think it's interesting that the 4th gen iPad mini has the same specs, just twice as much RAM, and it gets 3 years worth of software updates ahead of the iPhone 6 series. All right, talking about specs, it is the A8 chip. It's a 20 nanometer process. It's paired with the Apple M8 coprocessor, and its GPU does support Metal 2. Now, this thing came out in September of 2015 in 16, 64, and 128 gigabytes. So that was an improvement over the third gen. I think the capacities were a little bit different. You may have been able to get 128 on that. I'm not 100% sure. But then in September of 2016, they updated this with a 32 gigabyte option. I don't know if that was in place of the 16 or what. I haven't done my complete history on this device. This thing only came in 3 colors. We've got the silver here. It was also available in space gray, and you could get it in gold. Now, what I want to do here, I'm going to get connected to the Wi-Fi, and we're going to see if the iOS 9 App Store and the iTunes Store are working. Unfortunately, these older versions of iOS do have their flaws, and this being iOS 9.0, there's a chance that this thing has got a fair share of software bugs. We're going to see here if the App Store is working. And actually, well, it is working, but the reason I said that was because, I don't know if you guys saw, but the Wi-Fi bar dropped down to a single bar of service. And I thought maybe the Wi-Fi antenna was bad, but it seems like it's, ignore what I just said. This thing is connected to Wi-Fi and the App Store is working right there. I'd imagine it's very difficult to find applications that are supported here on iOS 9. A lot of times what you have to do is you have to sign in. Well, you have to sign in anyway, but you got to sign into your Apple ID, head over to the purchase tabs, and then you can download apps that way that you've previously purchased on other devices. A lot of times you can't just download the most recent version of an app for the first time. So if we took a game like, I don't even know, something that's been out for a while, we'll use Minecraft for an example. This game's been out forever on iOS. I bet if we signed in and tried to buy this, it would not let us. However, if we went to the purchase tab and had previously owned Minecraft, then we would be able to download it. So there's a little bit of a workaround there when you're getting applications for some of these older devices on older versions of iOS. If you sign in, go to purchase, and then you can download applications that you have already owned in the past. So one thing I like to do on this channel is show off the camera on these devices, and I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe this is an 8 megapixel lens on the rear. I'm pretty sure it's an 8 megapixel there and 1.2 on the front. I don't think we can do 1080p video. Camera settings, record video. Okay, so 1080p 30 FPS is the best we get. So I'm gonna go ahead and showcase that. So we're gonna start a video here on the iPad and we're gonna switch over to it. All right, here we are on the iPad mini 4th gen. It is unbelievably shaky because there's no optical image stabilization. Here's my main setup there with the mic over there on the side. And this looks really grainy. The colors are bad, the contrast is bad, the frame rate's bad, the resolution's bad. There is nothing pleasant about this experience here on the iPad mini 4th gen. I really cannot recommend using this as a recording device. All right, let's go ahead and switch back. All right, there you guys got to see and listen to how the iPad mini 4th gen records video. I'll be interested to see how that looks on the computer compared to this iPhone that I'm recording on. I record all my videos in 4K 60 frames per second, so the 1080p 30 frames per second on the iPad mini 4th gen is gonna look quite a bit different. And then obviously you've got the color and the contrast and everything else that comes with having a new camera lens. Overall, moral of the story, iPads are not good for taking photos or videos. Don't do it. Don't be that person recording videos with your iPad. 1, the quality's bad, and 2, you just look kind of silly. So Apple sold this iPad for close to 4 years. That's a long time for a device like this. It was sold all the way up until March of 2019 when it was replaced with the 5th gen iPad mini, which was a huge leap over this. Given they were 4 years apart, I think that makes a little bit of sense. But the 4th gen was Apple's real first transition into making the iPad mini more of a power device. They give it some higher end specs, good memory, and this thing had a great run of software support. It started on iOS 9, and it would get iOS 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 is where this thing finishes support, much better than the other A12 devices like we discussed earlier. So I think the 4th gen mini is a clean device. You can pick these up pretty cheap. I mean, you're not gonna get one on iOS 9, but I think these can be had for like $30, $40, $50, depending on the specs. Very cheap device, really not capable anymore. There's no Apple Pencil support. You're stuck on iOS 15. That's like, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years outdated at this point. You can pick up an iPad mini 5th gen for a little bit more, and that's gonna be a much better value, significantly faster performance, and better software support. So the iPad mini 4th gen, while it did change the game, this thing is definitely a vintage device now, and finding one on iOS 9 is pretty cool to see. Let me go ahead and test out Siri. Gonna have to turn it on. Siri is actually available on every single iPad mini. So it came out in 2012 on the 1st gen iPad mini, which is a bit interesting because it was not available on the 2nd gen iPad mini, even though they shared the exact same hardware. The 4th gen mini had some better or different microphones, so it was able to have Siri versus the 2nd gen iPad could not. But let's see how it works here on iOS 9. Go ahead and turn the volume up. What's the weather right now in New York City?
It's currently clear and 81 degrees in New York.
All right, so Siri sounds a little bit dated, but this thing worked just fine. And that was actually very fast response from Siri on iOS 9. So pretty cool to see that that is still working. So Siri works, the App Store works. Let's see if the iTunes Store works. I would imagine that it does. Yep, and that loaded right up, and everything actually looks pretty good. This looks how it's supposed to. A lot of times these older iOSs have things kind of all over the place, very scattered. Not the case here on this iPad mini. Now, let's check out Safari. I will be a little bit surprised if Apple's website loads like it should, but it might. Okay, yeah, so you can see the text is all over the photos there, and we're missing a whole lot of content here. So Safari is not working like it should. Anyone who's getting one of these on iOS 9, I don't think is getting it to use as their daily device. It is just a collector's item at this point, and that's why I got it. So super cool to get this 4th gen iPad mini on iOS 9. Leave me some comments down below. Are any of you guys still using a 4th gen iPad mini? Did you ever have one at some point, and how did it hold up? Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I look forward to seeing you in another one of my videos.